close this right here.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission. I call to order the meeting on November 6th, 2023. It is approximately 2:02 in the afternoon. Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call?
Darren Balaam. Scott Benton.
Present.
Shelley Buchanan. Charlene Bivey.
Here.
Sarah Darby. Elizabeth Flores.
Here.
Jessica Goicoechea-Reese.
Here.
Rhonda Lawrence will be absent today, Chair.
Thank you.
Leanne McCauley Larson.
Here.
Sarah Porter.
Here.
Sarah Porter.
Here. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Samples.
Here.
Natalie Sanchez.
Here.
Lieutenant Colonel Scott Cotterill will also be absent today. Miss Yvonne Allen.
Here.
And Emmy Zucker.
Here.
Roll call has been taken, Chair.
Thank you, and we do meet quorum.
You do have a quorum.
Thank you so much. And with that, we'll go into item 1. Can we get a test on the Zoom? Sarah, do you mind speaking so we can see if we can hear you? Commissioner
Yeah, I'm
Porter?
here. Can you hear me? I can hear you guys fine.
We're going to fix this technology thing.
No, I can hear you guys. And my mic is turned on.
Yes, but we can't hear that. Sarah, can you speak again?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you
Testing
now.
1, 2, 3.
Awesome.
Yes, good. Okay, great.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, we will move into item 1.03, which is our Pledge of Allegiance. And seeing a dear friend in the audience, Sergeant Baker, do you mind leading us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will move into item 2, which is our items for presentation, discussion, information, and/or action. Item 2.01 is the approval of our minutes from our October 9th, 2023 meeting of the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission. This is for possible action. So I will look to the commission for what kind of action you would like to take.
Commissioner Goicoechea, I move to accept the October 9th meeting minutes as written.
Thank you, Commissioner Goicoechea. Do we have a second?
Ms. Allen, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Allen. Is there any?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm going to be abstaining. I was not in attendance at council that day.
Thank you, Commissioner White. Do we have any public comments on this item?
No public comment, Chair.
Any discussion from the commission? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Just the one from Commissioner White. All right, motion passes. With that, we'll go to item 2.02, which is a presentation and discussion from our current Miss Nevada on Text to Regret, Reducing Online Risk for Washoe County Youth, a program for addressing screen safety and safe computer use among adolescents. This item is for discussion only. Taylor, if you would like to sit down, you're more than welcome to sit down as well. Maybe not, there's no speakers out, but we'll have
I'll
you
go.
stand.
I'll stand. It'll be okay. Well, first of all, thank you so
Let's
much.
turn your mic on.
Oh,
There you go.
is that working? Okay. Very good. Very good. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me today, and especially thank you to Mr. Benton for inviting me to participate in this opportunity. Online safety education is something I am very passionate about, especially as it pertains to youth here in the state of Nevada. I have made my year as Miss Nevada so far very adamant about pushing online safety education and advocacy for it wherever I can. And so I'm very thankful to have this opportunity to share with all of you and hopefully offer more insight as to why internet safety education should be considered especially important here in Washoe County. So with that being said, we can head on to that first slide. I wanted to start out by sharing a little bit about myself with all of you and also everybody else here this afternoon. As I mentioned, I have made my year about Miss Nevada advocating for online safety education. And this has really come with me growing up in the generation that had technology at our fingertips. I always like to joke with people that I am 23 years old, so I am part of the generation that can remember when technology was not really quite a thing yet. Nobody had smartphones, but also I am young enough to have remembered growing up with it. And so I really witnessed both sides of that world when I was younger. And I have really especially noticed the ways that my generation and even people younger than me have considered online safety in their own life. For example, my inspiration for becoming an advocate for online safety education was because of an experience I had with a friend, and even an experience I had a little bit later with one of my own peers. I had a friend who had a complete stranger that she became communicative with online try pressuring her into sending explicit photos of herself when we were freshmen in high school. And not only was that a complete stranger, but it was someone who had the power to possibly manipulate or take advantage of her, especially from the trafficking point of view. And then I noticed as I got older that this is something that is not only happening with strangers and people that they might be trying to take advantage of, but it's also happening with people that these kids even know. I myself had an experience when I was 17 years old where an ex-boyfriend of mine tried pressuring me into sending explicit photos. And I was extremely uncomfortable. I said no, we broke it off. And I'm very thankful that I had the online safety experience to help me guide that decision. Otherwise, I might not have been in quite as knowledgeable and as safe a position as I was to move forward and ultimately decide to become an advocate for online safety. And that is where I created Text to Regret. Text to Regret Reducing Online Risks began as a campaign in 2019, but in 2022, I transformed it into a 501c3 organization that was dedicated to fundraising, educating, and advocating for youth online safety, and really focusing on the 3 pillars of that mission and how they pertain to us as members of our society and members and citizens of Nevada. And that's where my meaningful connections to develop that mission really stem from and why I'm so passionate about it in every way. We will move on to the next slide. I want to especially focus on Text to Regret's mission because that's where the basis of all this really comes from. As I mentioned just in the last slide, Text to Regret's mission is to fundraise, educate, and advocate for youth online safety by implementing internet safety education in schools and youth programs. And the way I primarily operate that and help it work is by partnering with an organization out of California named CyberCivics. And CyberCivics is a digital literacy provider for schools and youth organizations throughout the nation. They have been very successful. They have implemented their curriculum in all 50 states, and it is something that they are very passionate about. I connected with them originally through a Family Online Safety Institute meeting, probably about a year or 2 ago, and immediately felt that their mission was aligned with my mission as the founder of Text to Regret. And so that internet safety curriculum is present in many middle schools throughout the country. And it is a curriculum provider that I am always very excited to share and advocate about because it has made a difference in the kids I have spoken to and the organizations I have been able to donate a curriculum to, but it's also made a difference in kids even outside of Nevada. So that is something very important to understanding why internet safety curriculums are so valuable to Text to Regret's mission. Moving on to the next slide, I wanted to dive a little bit more into the fundraising, educating, and advocating point of view for Text to Regret. I primarily fundraise for these CyberCivics curriculums by speaking to civic organizations like Rotary clubs, Kiwanis clubs, junior leagues, Sir Optimist organizations. I speak to them and give them the information they need to understand why internet safety education is so important. And that helps me connect with like-minded community members who also might be interested in donating funds to youth programs. For example, I recently worked with the Rotary Club in Boulder City, Nevada, which is my hometown, and they were very, very generous to donate $10,000 towards a cyber civics curriculums to go towards middle schools and youth programs in Nevada who are interested in them. And so that has made a tremendous difference in the fundraising aspect of this initiative. When it comes to educating, this is my personal favorite pillar of the organization because I get to actually go in and visit schools and youth programs, and that's what the teachers are doing who have access to this curriculum as well. I always try to go in and talk to them as Miss Nevada because that's super important as well, but there are 8 lessons in this curriculum, and so for one of those lessons, I'll be there, but then for the 7 other lessons, the teacher will be there giving it to them as well, which is why the education pillar is so important. And this is for speaking to students of all ages. Cyber civics specifically is for middle schoolers in that 6th to 8th grade range, but there are internet safety lessons that I love to utilize that can be for kids of all age. And they range from all areas of complexity, starting with the 5 principles of digital citizenship, which aren't even particularly about online safety. It's more about being a good person, but you need to have those emotional and maturity skills before you can allow your child to be successful online. But then they also go to the really complex subjects, like talking about sexting with these middle schoolers, because a lot of the times these are things they'll hear about already from their peers and from their friends. And so making sure that they have the actual tools and educational facets to move forward, knowing that they have the correct and safe information about really complex subjects like that is super, super important. And then education is also how I physically donate the cyber civics curriculum. The donation procedure for cyber civics is thankfully so easy, which is another reason I love them so much. When a school or a youth organization receives a curriculum, I communicate that to cyber civics, and then they send a portal with all of the lessons and all of the exciting lesson plans and information that they need to fulfill the education pillar of Text to Regret. And then last but not least, advocacy, which is a really fun one. I love to focus on introducing change in online safety policy here in Nevada and also throughout the United States. In fact, next week I will be traveling to Washington, D.C. to talk to 6 members of the Nevada legislature about the EARN IT Act. It stands for Eliminating Abusive and Rampant Neglect of Interactive Technologies. And what it seeks to do is reform Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which helps hold big tech companies accountable for child abuse that is happening on their site. Because one of the biggest problems when it comes to kids finding themselves in danger online is because it is happening in those behind the scenes chat rooms and not so much in a public forum that anyone can see. And that is where a lot of traffickers, for example, will make first communication with their victim, and then that spirals from there. And the reason why it continues to happen is because a lot of these big tech companies cannot regulate what is happening inside their chat rooms, because that is protected by Section 230, and therefore it makes it easy for both the predator and the person at fault and the big tech companies to get away with the material that is really being communicated with on their site, which can be very, very problematic. So I discuss those parts of online safety with community leaders and bring attention to the most pertinent online safety issues, because not only are there really complicated things like the EARN IT Act that need to be discussed, but it's also things that are already in place that need to be updated. For example, the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act has not been updated since, I believe, 2013, and it has been almost 10 years since then, and you all know how much the internet and social media and everything that comes with it has changed in that time. And so advocating for updating regulations and ensuring that children have the tools that they actually need to stay safe online is absolutely valuable and so important. All right, now the nitty-gritty part that really hones in why this is so important. Some facts and figures that back up why this is an issue, not only in Washoe County, not only in Nevada, but also throughout the United States. I wanted to include 9 statistics that really stood out to me when I was doing my own research about online safety over the years, and also things that really help convince teachers and really help convince educators why they need to have internet safety education in their classroom. So I will start with that 88% icon in the top left corner. 88% of Washoe County households have a broadband internet connection, which ensures that even if that child might not be using the internet right away, chances are an adult in their household is, or at least social media or the internet or a screen at the minimum is a part of their life. 91% of children in U.S. households that have family members that are active on social media. And so once again, even if that child is not on social media themselves, they have a family member who is. And so that can make a very big difference in their exposure to social media, especially depending on what age they are. 27% of children have encountered harmful material online. And I think that this is something that really speaks to me the most when I go and talk to kids, especially in classrooms and schools. Something really popular these days is a site called Omegle, where you can log on without an account or anything and have a conversation with a complete stranger. And there are a few regulations. And the stories I have heard about them encountering really inappropriate things that an adult is doing to themselves or to that child over an online video chat is super disgusting and scary, and really goes to show that even though 27% of children have encountered harmful material online, many more kids are putting themselves in that position, but just might not have exposed themselves to the harmful material yet. 46%, so nearly half of all teens aged 13 to 17 have been bullied or harassed online, especially about their physical appearance. That is seen as a relatively common reason why they are cyberbullied. And this goes back to, at least from my own recollection growing up, the very beginning of online safety lessons. Because I remember it being 2008 or 2009, and cyberbullying and how to prevent that was a very popular point of discussion. Because that's when I think we all as a society started to collectively learn that we really have a lot of power online, or at least our perceived level of power is increased when we think we're behind a screen and nobody can recognize us or hold us accountable. 71% of parents do not supervise their children's internet use after the age of 14. And that reminds me a lot of a statistic I have that is actually not on the screen, but the average parent only spends about 46 minutes throughout their child's life discussing online safety with them. And so if all of you went home and talked to your kids tonight for 47 minutes, you all too, you'd be doing better than the average population. But that really speaks to how much of a problem it is that this is not discussed at home, very rarely. And I think from speaking to parents and also kids, it's an uncomfortable point of discussion for them, because a lot of kids don't think their parents understand. And I know they do, but for some reason that communication line is being misinterpreted. And so it's really important that everyone exceeds that 47 minutes and raises that to, or decreases that statistic rather, to something below 71%. 72 million children have been victimized by online advertising firms, collecting an average of 72 million data points about them. So let me rephrase that actually. 72 million data points about children are collected from children by the time they turn 13 years old. And that to me is the scariest thing, because at a time when children are learning how to be themselves, there are advertising firms out there that know more about them than they know about themselves, which is really freaky. I think it's one thing for people above the age of 18 to say, all right, you know, sure, here is my third-party information, do whatever you want. And even most adults aren't okay with that. We all witnessed what happened with Facebook a few years ago. But when a child who is under the age of 13, who barely even knows themselves and who they are, have all of this information collected about them by advertising firms, it can make a huge difference in the way they are targeted online and the way information is perceived about them. At least 1 in 4 teens, 26%, are receiving sexually explicit texts and emails. So that means they are engaging in sexting, whether that be with a significant other or with a complete stranger. It can still be very dangerous either way, and it can invite severe reputational harm and mental health harm. 89% of sexual advances directed at children occur inside internet chat rooms or through instant messaging. And so that goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the Earn It Act, and why I personally think that is so important, because these big tech companies need to be held accountable for things that are not only happening on their site in the public forum, but also behind the scenes in the chat room, because as we see, 89% of these sexual advances are being directed at children inside the chat rooms where nobody can really monitor those conversations. And then last but not least, 36% of teachers received no training in online safety, security, and ethics in the past year. And that statistic came from the Independent School Management. And to me, that really goes to show, backing up that point about the 46 minutes, and that's the average amount of time that a teacher's or that a parent spends discussing online safety with their child. If they're receiving less than an hour of those conversations at home, and only just under 40% of teachers in the United States feel that these ethics are being taught in schools, then where are they receiving the information that will help them avoid sending a text to regret, so to speak, and stay focused on online safety education? With that being said, I want to focus on the last slide with the 3 most important things that are connected to online safety education and how it should be relevant for students and teachers and families, really, in Washoe County. And that first point I have up there is human trafficking prevention. One of my biggest pet peeves about online safety is when people believe that it is an isolated issue, when in reality it is something that is connected to a lot more, like human trafficking, like mental health, and like excessive technology use. And I think human trafficking is probably the most prevalent for students here in Nevada because we are the second state with the highest rates of human trafficking in the nation. And so when a lot of that communication is beginning online, it's important that online safety is taken into consideration and they are taught what red flags to look for. Second, we have mental health awareness. Washoe County has an average of 13 youth suicides a year. And understanding how mental illness can connect to online safety will contribute a significant level of knowledge to solving this mental health issue. Because a lot of these mental health problems that children are facing and dealing with, sometimes very quietly on a day-to-day basis, are beginning online. And last but not least, we have excessive technology use. 34% of today's youth claim to have excessive smartphone use, and those are just the kids that are admitting it, okay? It's probably a lot higher, even for a lot of adults. This statistic is relevant all over the nation and can be traced back to the exposure children receive when they are not briefed on social issues online, which once again just reiterates why these conversations should exist both at home and in schools. With that being said, I want to thank everybody one more time, and I would like to open up the floor for any questions you all have. It's a pleasure to be here and discuss something I am extremely passionate about, and I'm thankful to have had this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Taylor.
Thank you.
I am looking to the commission for any questions, comments. Taylor, if you don't mind coming back up, I do have questions.
Okay.
Or at least a question.
Sounds good.
I believe on your second slide, you said that you partner with Cyber Civics. What do some of those partnerships look like, and how can Washoe County tap into some of those resources, even if not in the school district, but in the community as a whole?
A lot of the Cyber Civics donations are given to schools or youth organizations that are in need of an online safety curriculum but may not have the funding to provide them for their school themselves. And so if those schools connect with me, I provide them with the portal that leads to that donation. And I have a very active relationship with Cyber Civics where I can provide that donation and make it a very easy process. And here in Washoe County specifically, and also throughout the state, it is most present in Boys and Girls Clubs because they have been a youth organization that has said, hey, we notice a need in our community where our kids need a little bit more help with online safety and understanding the protective measures of that. So Text to Regret has now donated a Cyber Civics curriculum to every Boys and Girls Club in the state of Nevada, reaching, I would say, about 22,000 kids for those messages. And I would really consider any Washoe County middle school to consider adopting a Cyber Civics program into their school because, once again, these lessons are not just for middle schoolers in general. It is divided up by grade, where 6th graders can focus on lessons, 7th graders, and then 8th graders. And so they have that complexity of learning it from the easier messages that are easier to grasp at the beginning and then really growing in maturity to handling them by the time they reach 8th grade.
Thank you, Commissioner Zucker.
Yeah, thank you so much. Is there a parent component to that training?
I do believe there are parent packets that are sent home with information about each lesson so that the lessons can be continued there and the conversations can be had at home as well.
Commissioner Biden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you
and, love this whole topic for you to, and the Miss America program. The young women all have a platform and some amazing platforms of issues that are relevant to our society, to young women, to, I love this because I think this is timely, I think, as we look at issues and then things that maybe we didn't talk about before too. And we look at our focus and how intense, not just this commission, but society is on the mental health issue, on the human trafficking, that I actually honestly first knew about and learned about human trafficking this year. And then I'm looking at Sheriff Phelan because we've been on this commission 9 years. I didn't know, human trafficking, and you hear of it, but never in my experiences did I think it was happening right here with I-80 corridor. And so I think the public awareness for the general public, as well as parents and grandparents and the kids themselves, the more awareness and education you have, you can't have enough to really make everyone be paying attention to help keep our kids safe, our grandkids safe, and our community safe. And I was curious on, with the Cyber Civics, how long they've been in existence, what the cost would be if someone was interested in sponsoring, and then what kind of, I'm sure they collect all the data on what their results, what difference have they been making? I'm sure it has to be a difference, but what kind of data have they collected on what kind of results they've seen from this programming that it has, and I don't even know how long they've been in existence.
Yes, I am not 100% sure on how long they have been in existence either. I would say for certain in the last 10 years for sure. And the cost for each curriculum is a great price as far as internet safety curriculum goes. Each Cyber Civics mini curriculum is $200, and that's what comes with the 8 lessons that are taught to the middle school students. They do have different levels of curriculum, so if you wanted a curriculum that was a little bit more vast and had more lessons, I'm sure it is higher than that, but the Cyber Civics mini curriculum is what I have focused on, and they have been very generous when working with me that each curriculum, even though it is $200, they have allowed me to purchase for $100 to donate to a school or a youth organization that is looking for one. And so that has been extremely, extremely helpful with pushing it out to more kids. And they have data points that are helping them update internet safety curriculums every year. Each Cyber Civics curriculum has a 1-year subscription, and then it does have to be renewed for a lesser price. But they look at their data points that they've done from research. I don't know exactly what those data points are, but they're updating the lessons based on what they are realizing is needed every single year with internet safety, because it is obviously a very rapidly changing subject matter. Every year, or really less than that, every week, there is a new thing on the internet pertaining to safety. And so they take all of that information and make sure to import it into next year's curriculum for it to stay constantly top of mind and updated for everybody who's using it. Thank you.
Any questions from those on the teams?
All right.
To the commission. Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.
That will bring us to item 2.03, which is the presentation and discussion of Safe Routes to School and National Walk Week, or Walk to School Day event that was held September 20th, 2023, both in which are sponsored by the U.S. Department of Transportation. It looks like Ms. Iverson is here. I will allow her to take over.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Iverson.
And good afternoon. I want to thank the commission for having me.
Thank you so much.
Sorry. Good afternoon. I want to thank the commission for having us here today. I'm Robbie Pate, Safe Routes Coordinator. And we'll be talking about the overall program, some of the things we've accomplished in the last year since the last time we've talked to you, and then we'll go into some of the events. Next slide, please. So wanted to start out kind of giving you an overall our goals and kind of our mission statement. So the Safe Routes to School program in Washoe County aims to increase the number of students walking, biking, and rolling and using alternative modes of transportation and reduce the number of vehicles traveling to and from school. Studies show that active children arrive at school ready to learn, increasing the number of students that get to and from school by other means than motor vehicles, which in turn reduces pollution and decreases traffic congestion within the front of our schools. Next slide. So we want to kind of go into why does safe routes matter. Sorry, next slide. We touched on it in the mission statement, but we kind of want to emphasize it keeps our students safer when they're walking and biking. They have a better focus. They're more ready to learn when they arrive at school. There's cost savings both for the school district and for families when we have kids walking and biking rather than driving. It also reduces congestion. I'm sure most of you have students and you've been to some of the elementary or middle or high schools. And parent pickup and drop off sometimes is a little chaotic. So that's another benefit. Next slide. So how do we do that? We do that with the 6 E's. Some of you may be familiar with these 6 E's. If you're familiar with the National Safe Routes program, their 6 E's are a little bit different than our 6 E's. They, within recent years, have taken out enforcement. We have kept enforcement as one of our priorities, and I'll explain that a little bit later, but we feel enforcement is definitely necessary. Next slide. So the first one is education and encouragement. We do that through a variety of different ways. With safety assemblies, outgoing coordinator training for us, we want to stay up on current topics, informal education, as well as just safety tips when we run our events. Next slide. So the safety assemblies pass on safety messages within our schools. This is an opportunity to help students learn about healthy habits, pedestrian, and safety. So what I mean by that is we get into the schools and we can do it a variety of different ways. We can do the assemblies in a mass group as a whole entire school. We can go to classroom, and we educate the students through PowerPoint, workbooks, and hands-on learning. Next slide. Engineering. Engineering is a pretty big one for us. And what I mean by engineering is what kind of infrastructure improvements do we need to make to the community? We do that a lot through capital project if it's an on-site engineering issue. If it's an off-site, we work with local engineers from both the city of Sparks, Washoe County, and the city of Reno. Some of it's grant funded, some of it's supplied through other resources of funding. Next slide. And enforcement. We find it difficult to take out enforcement when we want to implement school zones and rules of the road, but not have anybody there to enforce those laws within our community. So we think it's very important. And we have a great working relationship with the Sheriff's Office, Reno PD, and Sparks PD. A lot of our events, they come, they do their things. Or if we're finding manpower issues within the school police, they're more than welcome to help us at any time. Next slide. This is something that Jennifer kind of headlined. We're pretty proud of this, but Jennifer was able to acquire 5 SpeedR radar trailers. So starting in January, we're going to be doing an enforcement campaign, and you guys are going to start seeing these speed radar trailers outside of our school areas. And these are all mobile trailers, so they're not going to be just in one predetermined location and sit there for the entire school year. We're going to use these at different locations throughout the year, depending on if we're having issues in a certain area of Washoe County, or we're seeing something else, they'll be mobile. Next slide, please. Evaluations. We all do evaluations and everything. This is how we measure our success, but not only our success, some areas are failures, right? We need to know what's working and what's not working. So these are just some of the bullet points on how we get the feedback both from the community, the schools, and the students. Next slide. Equity. So we need to make sure that we're using equity in everything we do, from events to ADA requirements. So an example of that is you want to put in a new crosswalk somewhere. Well, there's costs that are going to come with that. It's not just paint, right? I have to make that ADA compliant. So we need ped ramps in there for maybe possibly students in wheelchairs or other type of community members that have special needs. Another thing is social economic diversities. What we see is we'll be out at a school and maybe a lot of kids are walking or biking. They have the best equipment. They got the best bike. They got the best helmet. Other areas of town, maybe that same amount of students are walking and biking, but they don't have helmets. So what we want to do is we want to go into those schools and do something that's called a helmet blitz, or is where me and Jennifer show up and we size and fit these students for helmets free of charge. Next slide. Events. A lot of you have participated in some of our events. We have three main ones, but we do smaller ones, and that's National Walk to School Day, that's Nevada Moves, and then Bike Month, which I know a lot of you have been a part of, and Jennifer will go into more detail about the events here in a second. Next slide. So some of the programs we implemented last year and continue this year is the walking school bus. We partnered with the health district on this one, and you may be asking, what is a walking school bus? So we'll go to the next slide. And you can read those, or I can just explain it. A walking school bus is a predetermined location outside of the school zone where parents and or students can group up, and then from that location walk to the school. And this serves as a couple things. When they're walking in groups, they're more visible and they're safer. They find it fun. It's outside of the school zone, so those vehicles that may be dropping off one of our students isn't in front of the school. It is operated by a volunteer or a staff member adult, so we always have one of those there, and the group of students then walk to school, sometimes stopping in different locations, picking up additional students. Next slide. And then safety patrols. Safety patrols have been around a long time, but Washoe County, me and Jennifer kind of implemented a new one through AAA. It's an older program. It's a great program. Again, when you guys are outside of schools and you see staff out there kind of doing crosswalk duty, we've now implemented the program where the students can kind of do that, but with a staff member within arm's length. Next slide. And now we'll turn it over to Jennifer. Thank you.
Okay. The 2022-23 year was particularly dangerous for our Washoe County students. We had 21 crashes, 10 of which occurred in marked crosswalks. One resulted in life-altering injuries, and that was the one in McQueen that resulted in criminal charges. 3 occurred in the same intersection, which was Stead and Silver Lake. There were flashers that were installed at that intersection through ARPA funds with the Reno City Council. So that was installed in June, I believe. Next slide. This year, we have already had 7 crashes. They are not occurring in marked crosswalks. They are very random. One was a DUI crash of a student that had just exited a school bus. Pedestrian safety is important to everyone in our community, and events are opportunities to promote a broader safety message in our community. Safe Routes to School focuses on 3 annual events, as Robbie stated: Walk to School Day, Nevada Moves Day, and Bike Week, which will be expanded to Bike Month this year because of testing in our schools. We want to be sure that every school has the opportunity to participate. We got feedback on that last year, that it was just too hard for them to participate. So we're going to expand it for the whole month, and we expect far more schools to participate this year. So we're really excited about that. International Walk to School Day is a global event that is 40 countries walking and biking to school on the same day. Unfortunately, International Walk to School Day falls during fall break, so we moved it to September 20th. I'm sorry, next slide, please. We wanted to encourage students to develop healthy habits earlier in the school year, so we moved it to September 20th. We also wanted to take advantage of good weather because it's very unpredictable in October in Reno. We had 1,800 students participate in events over a 5-day period. We had so many schools, we had to spread it out. Robbie and I wanted to participate in as many events as we could. So we were at Huffaker, Mount Rose, Bernice Matthews, and Grace Warner. There were many other schools that participated. We just could not attend all of them. Next slide. Safe Routes to School led each walk with a safety message. We had Officer Bowers and our new K9 Astro at each event, as you can see in these photos. He really does increase our engagement with students. He really gets the shy students to really come forward and talk. Officer Bowers is easily able to talk to them and encourage them to walk to school and give them safety tips, and Astro loves all the cuddles. The goals for Walk to School Day, of course, is to demonstrate the proper use of crosswalks and our traffic control devices, but really we want to remind students how fun and easy it is to walk to school. We want to reduce the cars in our school zones, and we want to reinforce the concept of safety in numbers. Safe Routes to School has developed relationships with all the local law enforcement agencies, school police, Reno Police Department, Sparks Police Department, and of course the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. They routinely provide traffic enforcement for us so that students can feel safe when they participate in our events. Because We have large turnout and we need that traffic enforcement. And of course, we thank our council members for attending. This year, we were able to get a really good photo of all the people that attended. We had a really great turnout. Walk to School Day is a fabulous event, and it really just encourages our students to walk to school, and it shows them how fun it is, and it gets their friends. We were able to walk. We were in the very back this year. We could hear all the students talking and how much fun it is, how amazing it was that they had all the officers there. We had all the agencies, and the fire truck was there, so they thought that was very cool. Asher walked with us. It was just a really great day, so we really appreciate our community leaders for attending, not only just our events, but supporting our program in general. Our next events are going to be our safety message poster contest. There's going to be 3 winning categories for this: high school, middle school, and elementary school. Each winning category will win an iPad mini and a bicycle, and the grand prize winners winning poster will be wrapped on an RTC bus this year. So we're really super excited about that. That contest will close in January. It'll open in December. And then of course we'll have Nevada Moves Day on March 12th, and then we'll have Bike Month in May. So we look forward to inviting all of you to our events. Thank you for having us present today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jennifer and Robbie. Look to the commission for any questions. Commissioner Buchanan.
Yeah, I wanted to know, who's responsible for setting up the crossing unit schools? Is that up to school administrators? And can they get volunteers to do that, or are they mostly relying on employees to do those duties?
You cut out a quick second. What are you asking about crossing guards at the schools?
Yeah, I wanted to know who's responsible for setting that up. Is it just individual school administrators, and are they mostly just relying on school employees, or are they getting volunteers to do that?
So yes, the school administrators are the ones that set up the crossing guards. We'll go out to assist anytime they need our help. And the majority of our schools are currently using school staff. We do not have a program to fund a paid crossing guard yet in Washoe County. The other option is volunteers, but if they're alone, then they have to go through volunteer services and go through a background check if they're not an employee.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Well, thank you very much for the presentation and the wealth of information.
Thank you.
We will move to item 2.04, which is the presentation and discussion of the 2022-2023 collaborative effort with the Children's Cabinet Sign of Suicide Screening and link between social emotional risk markers and academic achievement. This is for presentation and discussion only. Dr. Lamarca, take it away.
Thank you, Chairman Benton, members of the Commission. For the record, Paul Lamarca, Chief Student and Family Supports Officer. Do we have a clicker? Can I do that? No clicker? Okay. I'm going to go pretty fast, so try to stay with me. Trying to share it. Okay.
Hold on.
Oh.
It's a different computer. It's on the
So I will just start talking a little bit and then we'll catch up. So as I believe you guys have heard on a couple of occasions in the last several years, we have a long-standing partnership with the Children's Cabinet where we run this Signs of Suicide Prevention program. There's really 2 arms of it. There's a curriculum piece of it that's handled primarily by our school counselors. That's in all middle schools, all grades. Sometimes it occurs a little bit in high school. But we also have this screening effort that's done in the 7th grade. And for a student to participate, parents have to provide permission. Most do. So for example, in this past school year, 22-23, and that's what we are hopefully going to talk about today, over 3,400 parents provided permission for their children to be screened. It's about 75% of the population. it's a pretty big logistical effort. I want to thank and acknowledge Keely Killian, who is here. She is the primary person within our staff that's responsible for the screening process as well as the curriculum piece of this. And I'd also like to acknowledge Kimberly Hargrove, who from the Children's Cabinet side of things is very much involved with all the screenings. It's quite an endeavor. On some of our larger middle schools, it can be up to 4 days of a week. So we have schools that are being screened in September, and we have schools that are being screened in April, because there's just no other way to get it done. It's a very expensive program, very worthwhile program. I'm gonna keep talking. To date, and we've had this now for a number of years, since 2018, I believe, when we have sort of looked at the data associated with the program, we're primarily just focused on how many kids have been screened, how many kids are at high risk, medium risk, what are some of the demographic breakdowns. There's this ongoing kind of debate in education circles about the role of school climate in academic performance. So this year we really wanted to expand on the evaluation, take the information from the SOS screening and tie it into information we have in our student information system around academic outcomes. And so that's what we did. And let me back up 1 second. The suicide screener is a 7-item questionnaire that a child answers. There's 2 questions that ask directly about suicidal thoughts. If the child were to say yes to either of those 2 questions, they're immediately marked as at high risk. There are 5 other questions that sort of tap into depression. If they're marked 3 or more of those questions affirmatively, they are flagged as at medium risk. All medium and high risk students are seen that day on campus by a licensed therapist through the Children's Cabinet. That really they're looking for the acuteness of the problem. Is this a child that needs a hospitalization right now? How do we coordinate with family to make sure that they have appropriate resources? In the last couple of years, what we've added to the questionnaire is a couple of questions regarding trusted adults. So every child is asked, is there an adult within the school setting that you feel comfortable approaching if you have a problem or if a friend had a problem? Sometimes students will skip things, especially questions they don't understand. So they're asked one-on-one about that. They are probed a second time. They're given examples, their counselor's name, the teacher's name, people who they might be able to trust. So we tied together the SOS information, the trusted adult information, with what we call our early warning system variable. That's a historical variable within Infinite Campus, within our warehouse that basically looks at a variety of factors: past attendance, transiency, retention rates, suspension rates, and some academics, and gives the student a risk score. No risk, low risk, medium risk, high risk. So we've matched those together, and then we matched it with chronic absenteeism, student behavior, and academic performance. We don't have a presentation?
The rights to the PDF aren't, we'd have to sign it, and I don't have the credential for that.
Okay, does everyone have the presentation? So I'm just going to walk through some things. I think I can do it, and we could just make this a little bit more conversational. But I've already skipped our promise statement, which I was supposed to start with.
And just so everybody's aware, Sylvia has emailed this presentation to us, so it's not tangible in front of you, it is in your email.
Yeah, and I think I can talk through it, and then maybe later look at the presentation. If you have questions, specific questions, hit me up, and I'll be happy to answer them. This is very much related to our promise statement. It's very much related to some of our goals. We have 5 goals in the strategic plan. This sits like squarely within safety and belonging. I've already talked about the SOS kind of screener itself. So among our 7th grade population, when we did this matching, this fairly intense matching, we have over 3,200 students that are part of the evaluation. So it's a very powerful data set. When we look at our 7th grade students, the 3,200 students, roughly 29% of them are at risk based on the early warning system. They're either at moderate or high risk. That's a high number. When we look at trusted adults, and this is a statistic that always stands out to me, 17% of these students cannot identify a trusted adult. And then when we look at the suicide screener, Nearly 34% of these students are either at medium or high risk based on this 7-item questionnaire. What we wanted to do first was just look at the associations among these social risk markers, these social emotional risk markers. So when we talk about kids who are at risk based on the early warning system, the population that is at highest risk, that's about 14% of our population. Nearly 30% of those students are unable to identify an adult they trust within the building. When we look at students who cannot identify a trusted adult, more than 50% of those students are at medium to high risk based on the suicide screener. And then when we look at trusted adult and we look at early warning system and the suicide screener, nearly 20% of the students who are at high risk based on the early warning system are at risk based on the suicide screener. The thing to know about the early warning system variables, we have that for every student, every year, every day. We have this information available to us. When we look at the association between these risk markers and academic outcomes, these associations are strongly significant, very powerful. When we look at the early warning system, I'm going to have to put my glasses on. This is memorized as I should. So when we look at that 14% of students who are at high risk based on the early warning system, they make up more than 50% of our students who are severely chronically absent. That means they're missing more than 20% of the school days. Okay. When we look at student behavior and major behavioral events, they make up 75%, or just under 75% of the students that we've flagged as exhibiting a high number of major behaviors. That is just 2 major behaviors or more. When we look at the trusted adult data and the SOS screening data, it's not as strong of an association as the early warning system is, but we still see the same disproportionality. So kids who can't identify a trusted adult and kids who are at risk based on the suicide screener are more apt to be severely chronically absent, and they're more apt to be having behavioral problems within our schools. The point of this is to say all these things go together, and again, and I'm going to keep saying until you're completely annoyed, we have the early warning system every day for every child. We look at academics, it's very much the same picture. So when we look at kids who are at the highest risk based on the early warning system, fewer than 5% of them are proficient in English language arts or in mathematics. And well over a quarter of them are in our lowest achievement category. The same disproportionality exists for kids who can't identify a trusted adult and for kids who are at high risk based on the suicide screener. In other words, they're underperforming significantly academically. All right. That's a lot of information, and if this was actually professional learning, I got another slide I want to talk to you about. This comes from a different study. This looks at the early warning system and GPAs at the high school level. And this was an interesting picture. You should take a look at it later. It's very colorful for one thing. The breakdown for GPA is less than a 1.0, a 1.0 to a 2.0, a 2.0 to a 3.0, and over 3.0. So among kids who are at high risk based on the early warning system, about 45% of them, actually it's more than that, about 43% of them have a GPA below 1.0, and another 38% have a GPA below 2.0. If you look at kids who have no risk based on the early warning system, it is just the opposite. It is very telling. So some of the key findings here that I just want to, I've said it out loud, but I'm going to say it again. 17% of kids can't identify a single trusted adult. Of those kids, more than 50% of them are at very high risk based on the suicide screener. All of our social emotional risk markers are significantly and substantively related to academic performance. So it's time we stop talking about academics over here and school climate over here. They're part of the same thing. We didn't share any demographic differences with you. All the usual suspects come out in this data. So our African American students, our Pacific Islander students, our Native American students, our students who are living in poverty, students who are homeless, students who are in foster care, all are at more risk based on the early warning system. All are less likely to identify someone they trust within the building, and all are at higher risk based on the suicide screen. There are a couple slight deviations from that general pattern. Our Hispanic students are more at risk based on early warning system, less apt to identify a trusted adult, but they don't show any more risk based on the suicide screen. It might be a cultural representation around suicide that is affecting that. And then boys and girls. Boys are more at risk based on the early warning screener. There's no difference between boys and girls in identifying someone they trust. Girls are more at risk based on the suicide screener. Girls are attempting suicide more than boys. Boys are more successful in completing suicide. Very sobering kind of information. Is this actually being seen now? Okay,
What page
skip.
are you on?
Huh?
What page?
Yeah, skip forward. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. That's where we would have been. So something's wrong with the PowerPoint because there's nothing in the boxes. So this is really fun. See how much I remember. No, go back to the previous one. So go back one slide, please. So the top left yellow box says family stressors in your packet, and the lower one says school stressors. And then in the middle, we've got the social emotional risk markers. And then on the far right, I think we've got academic struggle, we've got juvenile delinquency, and we've got mental health. So thank God, 34% of our students are not going to attempt suicide, but far too many do. But these risk markers are pointing at a whole bunch of deleterious outcomes that can affect children, such as getting involved in juvenile delinquent behavior, maybe even involved in our criminal justice system. So we need to intervene. The reason why I put family stressors up there is we do hearings for attendance, we do hearings for behavior, we have processes to support kids. This is a very small population within our district. It's about 1% of our kids need this really intensive support. It's nearly without fail, we identify significant family stressors as contributing to the problem. Not causal. This is not saying families are causing this, but there are family stressors that are affecting this and often distract from really getting the support that kids need. School stressors is critical as well. I mentioned at the beginning, kids who are at medium and high risk based on the suicide screener are seen that day by a therapist. They have a conversation, and kids very consistently identify stressors within the school environment as contributing to how they're feeling. Bullying behavior, just negative peer relationships, some of the things that we heard from Taylor earlier are affecting kids on a daily basis. Negative adult-student relationships, what students feel are unreasonable academic expectations, too little time to get done everything that needs to get done. So we have a need to intervene early relative to some of the stress we know we create within a school system, and also to intervene to help families deal with some of the barriers that they're experiencing. A key area here, and it says it on the screen, is family resource centers. Once we identify some of these problems, we need to mitigate at the back end. Care Solace is an example of what we might do there. All the work that Keeley and our counseling teams, our mental health professionals do. So there are things in place. We need more of that. Thank God for our partners. The next slide talks about just a few action steps that we're working with our schools to begin taking. We need to use data to better kind of drive our actions. I will say that there is some danger here. It's important that we know where our kids are and some of the risks that they may experience. But most of everything we would recommend be done is good for every child, regardless of their status. More positive relationships are good for everyone. It just happens to be especially good for some kids who are lacking those. So there's a kind of a catch-22 with too much data analysis. We don't want to blame and just make assumptions about certain groups of kids because of patterns that we see in the data. Connectedness activities. This is key. I love that our superintendent is focusing in on this. We are trying to support our schools and recommending that they engage in these sort of large-scale connectedness activities at least 2 times a year, both from the perspective of adults and students. I promise you that in our 17 middle schools where this data is coming from, there are adults who believe they have connections with the 17% of kids who don't feel that they have a connection. That's not to say kids are right and the adults are wrong or vice versa. There's a mismatch. We can't all connect with each other, but we can all make sure that a child has a connection. We need this data. We need it regularly. We need to normalize that it's okay to have positive relationships within our environment. We need to do a better job of our interventions and monitoring success. So I'm sorry, Scott, for the presentation. That's it for now. You can ask me questions later. You can ask me questions now.
I will look to the commission. Are there any questions for Dr. LaMarca? Yes, Vice Chair Sanchez.
Thank you for the presentation. I thought it went rather smoothly and you remembered all of the points with it. My question is, so when a student is identified with that 70% and can't identify a trusted adult, is that similar to a medium or high risk for signs of suicide? Do then you try to pair them with a trusted adult at school, or is that a possibility? Am I just?
Thank you for the question. There is nothing formal right now to do that. It's also a shame that, so I said, some schools aren't screened till April. It's a shame if we find out in April that this child is missing this connection. So we're trying to work with our schools so that we can flag that early. And some of our schools do a really good job with this. They'll have staff meetings where they'll put all the kids' pictures up, and staff members will have a few stickies and they'll identify kids they have relationships with. You can see a web around one child and you can see a lack of a web around another. And they will do things to try to support the child that's lacking relationships. But we need to do more.
Commissioner Buchanan.
Yeah, I had a question. I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback, so it's kind of hard to, there we go, it stopped. Okay. I had a question about addressing some of the structural issues in schools that may prevent these kind of connections from happening. So for example, in a lot of schools, in a lot of middle schools, that I've experienced and that I know about, there's a policy that if a student has a certain GPA, below a certain GPA, they are not allowed to join certain student organizations and activities. And I've found that, unfortunately, this helps push the kid out of the school. It keeps them from developing those relationships. So certain structural things like that, has anyone addressed those issues?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Buchanan. I do believe that schools are trying to grapple with that issue. So you are right. I mean, there are some common practices. One of the recommended disciplinary actions schools can take at times will be to loss of privilege. And that's kind of what, I mean, that's a small example of what you're saying. What I can tell you is in our strategic plan right now, one of the key action steps that needs to be taken is to increase the number of co-curricular and extracurricular activities that students have an opportunity to participate in. And that needs to be activities they want to participate in. So we have to learn from students. So I think we are recognizing what you're asking, and we are trying to make efforts to better connect students to schools. So I'm hopeful we will address some of these structural issues, and thank you for pointing those out.
Thank you. Great questions. Commissioner Von Allen.
Thank you, Chair Benton. Thank you, Dr. LaMarca. That was profound information. I'm curious, as we see mental health challenges and stressors dropping to lower grade levels, I know this is a labor-intensive process, but are you all looking at younger 6th grade, even 5th grade for this process?
One of the places we presented this information was at the Youth Mental Health Summit. And part of what we didn't, you know, how the crowd dies out in the afternoon. The whole idea of the crowd in the afternoon was to help all of our partners, and we have great partners, know this is a community issue. This is not a school issue. I don't know that we need to do SOS in every grade level, but I think that just doing it in 7th grade, we know we've got problems elsewhere. We need to identify that. It is very expensive. So we would need more partnership. I'll tell you, this fully taxes the children's cabinet. We don't have the resources within the school district to do it on the therapy side. But if we had more partnerships, we would see if we could expand it.
Commissioner Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question on the the action steps you're looking at, carry out connectedness activities at least twice annually with both staff and students. Can you give us an example of what those connectedness activities would entail or what they would be?
Sure. Thank you again for the question. So I kind of described one of the common ones where within the context of a staff meeting, you might have some number of kids, if not all the kids, up on a board, and all the adults are given an opportunity to identify kids where they know or believe they have beyond a superficial relationship. And that's kind of the key. Oftentimes we will know people's names, but we need to know their name. We need to know their strengths. We need to know their needs. So that it has to go beyond just sort of a superficial relationship. Through that practice, the school can identify kids who are lacking relationships. They can assign people. On the student side, you can do something very similar. Some schools are using sort of focus groups with kids to identify if they have trusted adults. There are a variety of activities that are social emotional learning department supports for schools. So that's a couple of examples.
Okay, so really connecting the kids, but maybe how do you get the kids to feel like they're a part of that greater community? And I would agree with you. I think years and years ago, I read studies of, especially in high school, but it can be lower grades too. Kids are not connected just to the high school. They become connected and their grades go up and their attendance goes up. Academics can go up also when they're connected with people that enjoy, whether it's origami club, doesn't have to be quarterback on the football team or cheerleader. It was clubs and chess club, things that kids could connect to and connect to other kids with similar interests, and that the results from that were pretty substantial. And I appreciate you mentioning extracurriculars on down to lower grades where kids don't feel like they're by themselves and they find something they have in common with someone else and share that, and that connects them but has great benefits across the board.
Yeah, the one thing I would add, I probably should have said this, we are guilty of often telling schools you need to form relationships with kids and not providing them support on how to do that. We may take for granted how easy it is to form relationships, but maybe that's only with people that we have an easy time forming a relationship. So we have to support our teachers and our administrators more with that. But you're right. When we have a student come, for example, through probation to transition back into schools, we try to connect them to extracurricular activities, athletics, whatever it might be, to get them engaged within the school environment.
Thank you. Commissioner Govici, I see you leaning in.
Thank you, Dr. LaMarca, for the presentation. I think that I just wanted to reiterate the statement that you made that while data is important and amazing, that the ability to have trauma-informed schools for all of our students and treat all students as though they are experiencing some of these adverse experiences, even if they're not showing up in a statistic, is incredibly important because there are so many kids who are not on this radar who need our support and our connection just as much. So I really appreciated you making that statement. I think if our entire community could treat every child and every person as though they're going through something really hard, it would just make a much greater community and school district.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, we'll close item 2.04 and move to item 2.05, which is the presentation and discussion of possible actions to provide a recommendation to the Washoe County School District Board of Trustees on vaping prevention strategies in Washoe County School District schools, including but not limited to possible use of vape protection sensors. This is for possible action. And it looks like we are joined by Cynthia and Roger.
Yes, Roger Botman for the record. I'm a counseling specialist with Washoe County School District. I oversee elementary schools. I was also previously hired as a prevention specialist. I've been a substance abuse counselor in the area, and I also sit as chair of Join Together Northern Nevada, a substance abuse prevention coalition.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Cindy Mills. I'm a substance misuse specialist counselor for the district. Currently, before that, I was a middle school counselor, elementary counselor, and classroom teacher. So most of that was pre-e-cigarettes. So I guess we get to do the WCSD promise. We will know every student by name, strength, and need, so they graduate prepared for the future they choose. And we will deliver on this promise in partnership with our families and community. That sounds like what we just talked about a minute ago. So I thought we would start with the impact that we've seen in the schools with e-cigarettes. Like I said, my experience has been probably the last 6 years or so. And I remember I was at a middle school in the district. I was at Pine Middle School, and a lot of times we had lunch duty, so we would kind of patrol the restrooms, and a lot of the kids would come out, and like the girls, like I just thought like they smelled so good, and I would be like, what is that? Like, what is that from Bath and Body Works? Is that like coconut? And then I realized after, if they're like, no, that's vapes you're smelling in the bathroom. So that was my first encounter with, you cannot tell a lot of times when someone is using e-cigarette. So as far as the behavior, it's obviously a distraction and disruption to the classroom environment. A lot of students feel unsafe. There are obviously a lot of complaints about vaping in restrooms. Kids don't feel safe going to the restrooms in a lot of schools. And in response to that, sometimes we close the restrooms, and then it's not fair to students who don't get a chance to use the restroom because they're closed. It also leads to conflict with staff members. Administrators already are spending, and teachers spending so much time enforcing these anti-e-cigarette policies that it's taking away from a lot of other duties that they have. The way that e-cigarettes have been marketed on social media and other places really normalizes such a risky behavior. Kids think that they're just water vapor. They think that they're better than cigarettes. They think that all these nicotine e-cigarettes are safe for them. And I think we've all seen the flavors and shapes that they come in are obviously marketed to our youth. We've also, so that shows that's the current perception of risk is low. Kids don't think it's really a big deal. They don't see, and we know that most adolescents don't see long-term. They see what's right in front of them. We've also seen in schools a lot of these vapes are being filled not only with flavors and metals and chemicals, but they're also being laced with other drugs like angel dust. We've seen fentanyl laced vapes, and we tried to really reach out to the schools last year about a lot of e-cigarettes being laced with THC concentrates, because now that is a felony to be caught with those, and we're trying to increase that understanding so that, because we've had high school students, middle school students that currently have felonies because they didn't understand the law around that. We've also had high school students who have that's impacted job opportunities for them, having a felony on the record. It's also led to students losing their scholarships. So, and I'm sure among other things. As far as health, I know that most of you are aware of a lot of the physical health impacts that e-cigarettes have, respiratory, cardiovascular issues. Even students that we have at schools who do not actively use e-cigarettes themselves are exposed to that secondhand smoke. We see, when talking to kids and reading studies, we see that a lot of kids start using e-cigarettes because they feel anxious, because they feel sad or depressed, when in reality, those worsen anxiety and depression. Kids who try to stop or maybe don't do it during the day experience withdrawal symptoms of addiction, and it affects students' ability to focus in school, memory, and causes mood swings. So that all impacts their learning. Recently, I was just going to share, I was on at a conference. There's an organization called PAVE, Parents Against Vaping and E-Cigarettes. And there was a therapist on there who shared that he had written a 504 for a student in the past, and that student had come back to him before the ACTs and SATs and asked if he would write in there that he was allowed to have an e-cigarette during the test, because he just believed so much that that really calmed him down and made him less anxious. So on the next page, we have some discipline data related to vaping. As you can see, there hasn't seemed to be much trouble of identifying kids who are vaping. We had over 500 incidences last year, and we're well on our way this year. And again, probably no surprise, number one place where the use of e-cigarettes occurs is in the restroom, and followed secondly by in the classroom. So, which I think is really sad, because, you know, you can kind of change your restroom habits maybe if you have to, and you just ask for a patch during class, but when it's happening in your classroom, because it's so easy to hide, I mean, the kids just use it and just, you know, blow it down their shirt. You can't not be in, other kids can't not be in the classroom and escape that. So our data from month to month looks pretty steady, and also days of the week looks pretty steady. So as far as strategies, when we use the tiered system, these are things that we're actively doing now in the school district to try to prevent kids from starting to use e-cigarettes. We start with Tier 1, which is universal prevention. This is prevention that we try to provide to all students. We have the availability to deliver this and provide it to students, but it's not necessarily consistent, and that's mainly based on our capacity to be able to reach such large groups of students. But we're always in the process of trying to train more people, do a lot of train the trainer programs so that we can get the information out to as many kids as possible. So one program that we use is called Catch My Breath. It's a great evidence-based anti-e-cigarette program. We also we rely heavily on our community partnerships. So Join Together Northern Nevada, as Roger mentioned before, helps us deliver a program called Too Good for Drugs. And that starts as early as kindergarten. And that's also an evidence-based program that's shown a lot of success in schools. And we also have a partnership with the health district, which is not called the health district anymore. I can't remember, Nevada Public Health something. But they help us and use resources from the Stanford University Prevention Toolkit. So, and other prevention SEL programs that we have, like Second Step, those all help to promote good decision making, being able to ways to say no. It's all working toward the same goal. Our policies, of course, support a vape-free environment, although we're working toward making those more consistent and well-known. And in schools, we provide resources that are available to both parents and students so they can be informed about the dangers of vaping and how to discuss that with their children. And we have school counselors to support students. And back to the resources, this is again back to our partner Join Together Northern Nevada. Roger and I went over there to get some feedback from them. And these are some examples of brochures, and they have stickers. This is a brochure about vaping that talks about the flavors. You can see the donuts and the Fruit Loops. And so we have these available in schools. And a new thing that they've offered that I thought was really cool is they have these affirmation boxes that are available for schools to get. It kind of looks like an old-fashioned newspaper box that you can like open up and get free stuff out, and they have like fidgets and they have these stickers and things like that. And they recently acquired a 3D printer, and so they've been copying and printing these breathing necklaces. They said they can make them for about 50 cents, which I thought was really cool. So they come with little instructions in here that say, great for mindfulness, controlling your breathing and for feelings of stress and anxiety. Inhale, take a deep breath in through your nose, exhale through the tube, relax your shoulder and jaw, repeat. So kind of a cool little substitution device. So anything we can think of to stay ahead of what the kids are thinking of, and social media is giving them ideas to do, we're willing to do.
All right, Roger Botton for the record there. We're going to go over some additional strategies, things that we're doing in the school, although this is not always consistent across all schools and grade levels. We do try to identify students that are higher risk for vaping, so we can look at interventions for that. We do have a thing, if you're caught, there are consequences for that, but they also try to offer a class that you can go to our SAP classes, substance use prevention classes, on Tuesday night. And they go over some, it's a more tier 2 approach, small groups, talk about issues of substance abuse, vaping, things like that we can address. Schools also try to monitor where students often vaping. That's, that's a high use of staff time and all that, but that's important. And it also helps get across the message that we do not permit vaping or use of e-cigarettes in schools. On tier 3, students are already addicted to vaping. They do provide referrals for addiction counseling and additional supports from students. In our schools, you use restorative practices. And if there's instances of, they can make amends, look at the consequences of the behaviors and work through groups like that. We also encourage parents to be part of this. We can't do this alone. When we do an SAP class, a substance use prevention class, one of those which I teach, we require someone adult to be there with them. Usually a parent, but it could be someone over 18 that will come and help support that and be a partner in that. Because it can't be just something we're giving to the children, it has to be something we're trying to include the whole family in that. We also want to look at, we have alternatives, like for suspension, a lot of times kids are suspended, it's breaking the rules. They can get suspended, but a lot of times they can do an alternative, they can come to that class and participate in that class with their parents and they don't get suspended. I think on our conclusions, what we're looking at here, and then we also have a nice handy little recommendation for the board. So we'll go with that now. We want to continue to expand prevention and programming in schools. I think that's important. We have to reach down in all ages. That's just something we can't do in high school or something we catch caught someone using e-cigarettes or substances. We have to look at prevention down even through elementary, and we're doing that now. But I think we have to expand that. That's also one of capacity. We have partners at JTN who are really helpful. But as we look at, in here we have one person doing substance misuse in the district. One person for all our schools, for all our students, for 61,000 plus students. We want consistency in discipline policy and prevention planning and programming across our schools. As we look at what we're doing, that isn't consistent across everyone. Schools are kind of their own little cities. and implementing some things, how they do, and their policies, what happens if you get caught vaping. We'd like to see some time to do that at those capacity. In fact, there's not always a good time to be doing prevention work. We can come in for counselors or outside agencies to come in, especially like in middle school. I encourage if we could have a health class for middle school. I think it would be real important. We could address a lot of those things, a lot of prevention issues within schools that we just don't have time to do that. I know that's difficult to drop one more thing in, but these are important. If you're dealing with issues of substance abuse or any other issue, or vaping, you're addicted to something, that's taken away from your academic success. Along with that is increased training, increased teacher training, and that's on effective interventions, learning signs, symptoms, when you detect someone needs support. We always want more alternatives to suspension. We want kids in school. I don't think that helps us, and it's not providing much in terms of prevention, in terms of support, if we're sending a kid home. A lot of times those are situations where the school is the most consistent, positive place they can be. And if they're going home to a chaotic, stressful situation, we're not always doing them a favor in that area. Parent workshops, we need to reach out. This is something, as people said, in a lot of areas, we can't do this alone. This isn't just a school problem. It's a community, it's a society problem. We have to bring in parents as partners. We're much more effective. We can work with parents. I'm really concerned with this legal risk, and I do their SIP classes, and almost every time I've been in there, I've had a kid sitting with a felony. We're here to provide a future for our students. An opportunity where they can get a felony on the record when they leave, that's not helping in any situation. I mean, we can say it's a deterrent, but I haven't had a kid sitting in there, or a parent, because it's the parents that said they knew this was the case. We have to do a better job. I think that's putting a burden on the schools, but also on the legal system. New services and all that, that's a big burden. We also have use of vape detectors as part of a comprehensive program. I think that's been brought up, things for vape detection. It's a mixed bag. There's pros and cons to vape detectors. They do act as a deterrent, and it can support the school's mission, letting people know that that's going to be, that we don't support the use of vape pens or drugs or alcohol, anything like that in schools. It can assist the school administrators, knowing when that's going on, where that's going on. It also collects data. But I think the problem is there's a lot of other cons that go with it. They're expensive. They can be tampered with, and there's maintenance to that. I think there's privacy concerns. People don't like junk detection in there, in the bathroom, especially. Maintaining those vape detectors, they find ways to bypass it. I think it's not effective prevention. It could be a deterrent, but I think we need to live a holistic approach, that we need more than just a way to punish kids or something, or catch them, but we need to be supporting. We have to be educating. We're educators. School district has to be more than just catching you doing that, and as a deterrent, we have to combine that with prevention and also with services, support, and counseling if they need that. And so I think they really have to consider that as part of looking at it. So in the last one, a recommendation to make it easier for you at least to support defense of that. Our recommendation is that the Health and Safety Schools Commission recommend to the Board of Trustees that the district administration develop a comprehensive prevention and intervention strategy to combat vaping or use of e-cigarettes. That includes policy development, an information campaign for both students and families, and staff training on effective intervention. Additionally, district administration should conduct a cost analysis regarding the implementation of vape detection systems. And that's what we have. Any questions?
Thank you, Roger. Interesting to hear. Sylvia, do you mind leaving the recommendation up so that we can review it as a commission, since this is an action item? I see the vice chair leading it.
Thank you guys for this presentation. That was very helpful and very comprehensive. So my question is, so I noticed on tier 1 that it looks like the data-driven resource is the Catch My Breath program from Stanford. So for tiers 2 and 3, is there much data available in terms of sort of restitution or restorative practices for students to engage in, such as having them be the folks who are leading some of these courses, or having to do community projects within the school to give back to the school? Is there any data that shows like what are the most effective consequences when you get up to those higher levels?
Not particularly, no. It's very inconsistent of what they're doing, and I don't have access to any data and effectiveness of specific interventions that we're doing at those schools at tier 2 and 3.
Commissioner Flores.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. It's very enlightening. When you talk about the deliverables of Catch My Breath, the Stanford program, Too Good for Drugs, how and when are those being delivered, knowing the limited resources that the school district has?
Well, for years we're trying to mainstream this a little more, but we've kind of done it on a first come, first served basis. Schools who seek it out are the schools who are put first in line for that. As far as the Catch My Breath and the Too Good for Drugs, recently we have been trying to do train the trainer programs so that there was one recently in October, and there's one coming up again soon in the next couple weeks, where we're inviting counselors to come get trained. And then there's a library because the Catch My Breath is free and the Stanford is free, which free is great, but the Too Good for Drugs is pretty expensive. So we have enough, I think, 2 kits per grade level that were purchased by JTNN that counselors who go through that Too Good for Drugs training can check those out like on a library basis.
Roger Bottom, for the record here. JTNN is a great partner with us, and they are doing Catch My Breath and Too Good for Drugs. But they have capacity to do like 6 schools, maybe a semester or so. And so they're trying to train our staff so counselors can come out and teach in the other remaining if they're interested in that. We don't have a requirement to do that, so it's when counselors feel that that's a need within their schools, they can contact JTNN, they can come in, or they can get trained and provide that within the school. At one time, when I was first hired as a prevention specialist in the district, and we used to provide that, but there was only 2 of us, and so we were doing just like 4 schools a year or something like that. We were providing, or maybe a little more, but it's one of capacity. We have 60,000 students. We only have we had a grant that was probably 20 years ago or more, and we had like 3 people or something like that. So there's only so much we can do. It's needed, and that's why we're trying to train the counselors at every school to do that. But if we had a policy that maybe recommended that, or that was something that we're doing within the district, I don't want to make recommendations of that then people would be doing it more often. But as of now, we don't have a policy as how often, or it's not required within the district or anything.
Well, and that's why another one of the recommendations was if we would have some kind of mandated class for students, especially in middle school, where we could go in and actually, Keely Killian, this is one of her campaigns too, because that would give a place to deliver, the SOS curriculum also, and there's just not a catch-all where especially in middle school, at least in high school, it's still a little bit shaky on whether or not every kid takes health or freshman seminar, but it's a little more solid where we can get in and see kids where we're really lacking that in middle school. If we want to go in there, we need to go into a science class or a math class or a English or whatever class. There's nowhere really for us to go.
That's one of the reasons we would like a policy to just start looking at that. Now it's up to individual schools, principals, leadership, and what they feel is a need within their schools.
Commissioner Goby.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Do we have, or are we working on any longitudinal data from the schools and the grades that you guys have been able to deliver some of these younger prevention programs, and identifying if that's making a difference longer term as they go into middle school or into high school?
We don't have,
Well, that, I talked a little bit just when I talked a few minutes the last meeting that we were here, but I'm trying to work together this year with Join Together Northern Nevada, and we picked the Reno High School vertical and the North Valley verticals in order to really try to hit those middle schools, high schools, and elementary schools for 2 solid years, so that we do eventually have that data. But at present time, we don't.
Thank you. It looks like Commissioner Porter has her hand raised.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify on your recommendations when we were talking about the vaping detection, that we are wanting to make the recommendation of the company that presented at our last meeting, because it sounded like, based on obviously the schools you just talked about that would be in this this test program, this pilot program. Are we going to specifically make that recommendation that we work with that particular company that has already kind of done some of that legwork and groundwork to do the use case?
I see Dr. LaMarca stepping up to the podium, but as a commission, I don't think that's the place that we come into play. There is a main process that the district has, so as a commission, I personally couldn't support one company over another because we've only heard from one company. Let's allow the school district to do their job and vet through that process.
Sure, because that was going through a procurement process, if that was part of this recommendation, right? That it would be more of a procurement process. They were just presenting to us how they would have done it.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thanks for the clarification.
Of course. Commissioner Buchanan.
Yeah, I'm glad that it was mentioned that there are many cons to these vape sensors. I think we haven't even addressed it. No one's even talked about it, but all of the negatives that can be associated with these. I've spent the last week researching into what goes on in schools that do have these sensors, how kids can hack into it, how they can bypass it, how they just move to other parts of the school, the time pressures that it puts on administrators who do not have time to run down there and catch a kid. I've also looked into the artificial intelligence that is used with these cameras that are placed outside of bathrooms and how they tag and categorize children by their physical characteristics. And I'm really glad that we brought this up. I have a lot of concerns, as you can tell, about the vape sensors. So I think that this is something that we really need to think about before we include it in any kind of recommendation to the school board.
Thank you for sharing. Any other commissioners? So Cindy, one question that I have is, has there been an assessment done by middle school and high school principals on what needs they want to see? When it comes, like, we can ask all day long for them to develop a plan at the district level, but is it something that is comprehensive enough for a site administrator to really delve into it? And has an assessment been done to assess that?
I don't know of a formal assessment that's been done, but just from the emails, phone calls, and feedback that I've gotten over the past year and a half or so doing this job, the biggest request is for kind of what we mentioned a few times, they can catch the kids. They're really good at catching the kids. It's what do I do now? You know, I don't want to just send them home. I don't want them missing out. So for programs that can be done during the school day with the staff that they already have at a very low cost as an alternative to suspension. So that's what I hear administrators looking for.
And can you remind me of the data points with the vertical of Reno High School and North Valleys, how long you've been doing that and when you would expect to have some data?
We just started this year and the minimum would be 2 years.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from the commission before we go to public comment? Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment?
No public comments.
No public comment, thank you. So I'll bring it back to the commission. If we can put the recommendation back up, just so we can see what our motion could entertain. So,
do you need us?
I think we're done.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So bringing it back to the commission, the recommendation that's been made by our presenters is on the board. It doesn't have to be the recommendation we follow. But this is a topic, and I looked to Dr. LaMarca, our vice chair, and I will be presenting to the board of trustees any recommendations next week. So whatever the recommendations from this commission will be, it'll be moving forward next Tuesday afternoon.
Scott, this is Sarah. I would recommend that, or I would move, I suppose it would be, right? A motion you need. I would move that we present the recommendations as prepared to the Board of Trustees.
Thank you. So we have a motion from Commissioner Porter. Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Flores. I second that motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Flores? Any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Buchanan, is that your hand up?
Yes, I would like to suggest that we take off the part about the vape sensors and make that a separate motion.
Okay. Would the individual who made the motion be interested in entertaining that suggestion?
I don't. I believe that that should be part of this overall approach to combating vaping in schools. I think it is an additional tool based on everything that's been presented that can really help schools, administration, teachers, counselors be able to have an additional resource that is not just such a manual effort. So I would suggest that it be included in this motion.
Thank you. So hearing that, Commissioner Govichia.
I think I agree with a lot of the concerns about the vape detection. However, I am in support of the motion as it was originally written, just because the motion identifies that we're going to do, or we're going to recommend that there's a cost analysis done, which I think is something that would be helpful moving forward to determine even if this is something that would be feasible with a lot of the ongoing discussion, Commissioner Buchanan, of the concerns and some of the, what may end up not happening, but I would love to know what the cost looks like. And, the cost also hopefully talks about some of those ongoing concerns as well, not just a monetary cost.
Thank you. Vice Chair Sanchez.
Would it be helpful if the motion read as such then, that in addition to this last sentence, the cost analysis and potential consequences to implementing vape detection sensors, would that satisfy maybe some of the concerns of the commission?
I'll send it back over to you, Commissioner Porter, since you originated the motion.
Yeah, I think that would be fine if we had some language in there around, obviously, we want to evaluate the cost and if it makes sense and any kind of potential pitfalls that could be a part of this, but that it should still be included in the overall recommendation so that it can be evaluated as part of this larger strategy.
Hearing that, I'm going to jump over to Commissioner Buchanan and then come back to you, Commissioner Porter, for a formal motion, including whatever recommendations from the commission. Commissioner Buchanan.
I think that if it's included in the original motion as it's written, it is coming across to the board as we are recommending the use of sensors. I personally like all the other stuff that's in the motion, and I would really like to get across to the board the importance of doing these programs. And I don't want to have to say no to the motion, but this inclusion of the vape sensors will put me in a position where I'll have to say no to everything, and then I can't show my support for the other programs. And then this was my concern, and the reason why I'd like it to be separated out.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Flores.
If I may comment, I interpreted the motion the way that Commissioner Goycochea did, because I as well have some concerns about the detectors, but was hopeful and assuming that through this process, we would learn more about the pros and cons associated with it. And that's just my comment I wanted to share.
Thank you. And before I send it over to you, Commissioner Porter, I have a question for Dr. LaMarca. Does this recommendation and the motion that we're about to make as it stands, does it take the ability away from the commission to do any further research or have any more presentations on such things, or does it send all of that to the Board of Trustees with our recommendation?
Thank you, Paul LaMarca. It doesn't preclude you from looking at research. We can bring that to you. You set the agendas, we work on that. We'd be happy to bring some of the information perhaps that Commissioner Buchanan is referencing for your consideration. I do think also, and it won't be part of the motion, but you and Co-Chair Sanchez, when you present to the board, should probably detail for the Board of Trustees that there's considerable debate regarding this piece.
Thank you. Okay, hearing that, Commissioner Porter, would you like to amend your original motion to include or exclude anything?
I would move it to amend that we include language around making sure that there is a cost benefit analysis and that there is significant, research or due diligence done on the pros and cons of implementing vape detectors as part of this overall program, but I would like to keep that in as part of the motion.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to have Sylvia bring up the motion so that you can read into the record the formal motion, and then we'll go over to our seconder to see if she is accepting of the amendments. So if we can pull up the recommendation, Sylvia, on the screen so that Commissioner Porter can read how she would like the motion to be stated.
And I can't see it, it's not on Teams, but I can probably. That's Dr. LaMarca's. Hold on, let's see here. I got the vaping. Okay, so all right. So Commissioner Benton, you want me to read off the recommendation with that change? Is that how you want it to move forward? Okay, I move that we as a commission recommend to the Board of Trustees that the district administration develop a comprehensive prevention and intervention strategy to combat vaping and the use of e-cigarettes that includes policy development and information campaign for both students and families and staff training on effective intervention. Additionally, we recommend that there should be a cost benefit analysis as well as due diligence on pros and cons and potential pitfalls of benefits of actually implementing vape detection sensors as part of this overall comprehensive program.
Thank you. Commissioner Flores, do you accept the amendment to the motion?
Commissioner Flores, for the record, I accept that amendment and second it.
Thank you. So hearing that we have a motion from Commissioner Porter and a second from Commissioner Flores, we've had a healthy discussion, which I always appreciate. We'll send it to the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries. Thank you so much for that conversation. And that will move us into item 2.06, which is discussion of the outcomes from the October 30th, 2023 Digital Safety Forum to determine changes to the future safety forum. So hopefully by now, all of the commission has been able to watch the presentation or participate in it live. I did see quite a few of you there, and I appreciate you taking the time out. The way this is agendized is we cannot take action on this item, but we can certainly discuss what we liked, what we didn't like about the safety forum, and what we'd like to see changed in the future. I will send it to the commission. Commissioner Zucker.
I just had a question on the attendance.
I've been on there, but is there a way that we can see how many people attended and viewed that?
So I think just from the attendance itself, we were up to about 48 live viewers. That did include the presenters, and then also those of us on the commission. And we can certainly work with the communications team to see how many have viewed it as a YouTube link, and certainly YouTube is fancy enough to tell us how many times it's viewed. So we can get some of that information and brought back to us, and it looks like Dr. Lamarca is stepping up to the podium.
Thank you. Megan Downs apologized. She's leaving the school district. So if you know Megan, send her an email, please, and thank her for everything she's done. She's got another position, so it's bittersweet. She said, other than people that were part of the presentations, there were 39 participants. She didn't break it down though into any subpopulations, and that's really all I have.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
Thank you, Chair Benton. I thought the content was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. I felt like half the audience was us and school staff. So I'm very concerned about parental and community engagement and how we can boost that interaction as well. Not just attendance, but also dialogue.
So for a recap, we had Dr. Kukalam Calderon present on vaping from the medical standpoint. A wealth of information. Presentations should have been shared. If not, they will be from the school district staff to us. Then we also had Dr. Aaron Rich from the university talking about screen time and what does appropriate screen time look like and how parents can effectively monitor that. So hearing what you just said, Commissioner Allen, it is concerning that the names that I saw, I know from the school district and the commission. So I think as a commission, we should be charged with how do we promote and advertise? Is the time frame that we chose to do the digital form, is it conducive to those that are working? Who is our true target audience? I appreciate the school district staff always being supportive of these initiatives that we campaign, but how do we get parents and our community members involved? Not to say that any one of you isn't a community member, and we share that information as vastly as we can, but how do we do better day out is what I'm hearing. Commissioner Govicia.
I'm just curious, and Dr. Lamarca, maybe you know, on the other parent academies that are advertised, do you guys get wonderful participation in those, or is it similar, kind of a smaller number of people? Is there something that we're missing?
I think it's hit or miss. I think we've had some great events where we have many people show up, and I don't think by and large we've had great attendance at the safety forums. So we should work on some outreach maybe differently than we have previously. We're open to ideas. We will have someone replacing Megan, and they will help us. For the time being, it will be Fatima Regas. We can work with them and try to get the word out better.
I just wonder, what that might look like for when we did the mental health awareness day. I don't remember what it's called, I'm sorry. We had not a ton of people, but hundreds of community members, and in that I facilitated one of the parent and peer support groups, and a lot of their feedback was really similar, that parents are not showing up to school district events, to mental health events, and I don't know the right way, I don't know the right answer, but is it, figuring out a way to do something in person where people get a lunch or, coffee, or is it those big partnering events that we end up with groups of people, different partnerships, maybe with people like Nevada Pet or other parent support groups. Specifically, there was some feedback from that group about kind of some wonderment about what would it be like if people had a lot of extra time to make actual cold calls and actually call families with, specific, just kind of not specific families, but just like, hey, let's see if school members and community members and people like us could make, 100 phone calls in a 3-month period. I saw your eyes go big. But I don't know. I don't know the answer. It's just it's a lot of resources and a lot of people to have potentially 10 community members. And in the last couple of years, that's what it really seems to be in all the different ways that the forums have been done.
Thank you for that. Before I go to Commissioner Porter and Sheriff, Ms. Yvonne Allen a few years ago suggested that we had a survey taken by the participants of the forum. And I think one of the points that I want to drive home is they wanted the digital format, right? It was a few questions. This year we did not have a question or a poll taken at the end, but I think that alone showed us that in person is harder because we've done that in the past as well. And I think we've had similar attendance. And hearing Commissioner Goichia's point is, I want to, as a commission, we need to do what's going to get the best attendance, and what is that? I don't know. Sheriff.
Not to have more bad news, but I would agree, even, and it's law enforcement, so I understand sometimes what's going on, we don't get those, but we've seen the same thing in our community engagement. We've changed the name multiple times, but for 5 years, we've outnumbered the community. We did the weekend where we had a soccer game with law enforcement just recently, and again, I can count on both hands the number of community members. But I would say, on the other hand, again, I just related to law enforcement, but like when we do backpacks in July, maybe it's time to start partnering, because I think we handed out 750. And then we have resources in the Boys and Girls Club gym. Maybe that's something we can, since we have their attention, and I know that they did make their way into the gym to see some of those resources we had, that maybe we look, or for multiple events at school, because we're having the same problem. We just can't get the community to come out, and we're planning our next community engagement or whatever we're going to call it for law enforcement as a region, and we'll probably outnumber them, unfortunately.
Thank you for sharing. We are not alone. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you. I'm wondering if we've ever had an opportunity, or if we ever reached out to the principals of all of the schools, because I know as a parent, I get a weekly phone call and email from both of my kids' schools that say this is what's going on for the next week, or this is what's going on for the month. And being able to have, when we have these types of these meetings and community events, to have that be a line item, either in what the voicemail or in the email, that helps promote that, because I know I really look at those because it has a lot to do with my kids' schools and what there is going on that's relevant specifically to them. Have we ever tried to be a part of those weekly or monthly announcements with the principals at the schools?
I'm not remembering anything of that nature, but on a more personal, I want to commend you for only getting one phone call a week, because I feel like I get them every night. Welcome to the high school.
Yeah, and I have an elementary, for context, I have an elementary and a middle schooler. So the elementary school, I get a phone call and an email, and then middle school, I think every other week it's some kind of email. But regardless, as a parent, and if we want parents and community members to be more involved, I'm going to look at the stuff directly from my kids' school. A lot of the things from the district, are not as relevant, or I don't pay as much of attention to because they're more general. So if in the email we can have a link to those so that the parents have that, if there's an opportunity to partner with those schools and those calls that go out, and have that be day before, even principals reminding you there's a safety commission, kind of community event, and you can find more details here or whatnot. I think that might be another avenue where we can get in front of more parents if that is our goal.
Thank you. Before I jump over to you, Commissioner Zucker, hearing your idea and 100 cold calls in 3 months from Commissioner Goichia, maybe we as a commission, as we are planning this, we take it on our own to those community members, those schools that we are personally attached to. I live in the Reed vertical, so I feel like if I go to the Reed principal and the Mendai principal, and then I do have a 5-year-old at Diedrichson as well. So making sure that me as a commissioner is doing some outreach to the people that I'm connected with. Hey, how do we get involved in your phone calls that you're connected that are happening? I'm sure they don't have an agenda where they have to send out so many connected calls, but also working with the district as a whole, the communication team, that could be something that we talk with Megan and Fatima about. Can we as a commission elect somebody to record a Connect Ed that goes on the week of so that the commission feels involved in that process. Dr. LaMarca.
I'm sorry to jump up because I thought Sarah would have. Let us work with legal to get some advice to the commission about how to get involved with schools. We have to be very careful about any communication that would become serial and then violate open meeting law. I think your ideas are great. The Connect Ed one is probably something we could definitely do. And I get the idea that the Commissioner Porter talked about, but don't yet send personal emails around or put things on Facebook or anything like that. It could create some problems for us, but we'll get you some support from legal.
Thank you. Sarah.
Thanks, Paul. I was about to jump in, but you covered that. And then also I just want to make sure we're cognizant that this is discussion only, so we don't want to be going too much into deliberations.
Okay. Fair, thank you. Commissioner Zucker.
I was just going to ask, because I'm new to this commission, is there a group that plans this event? There is.
It's us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So prior to you joining the commission, we made all the decisions, I want to say, before the school year ended.
Okay, so I guess a lot of conversation like this can happen at that meeting.
Absolutely. And to Sarah's point, our legal discussion is, we're just discussing this past event. Historically, this item has been constantly on our agenda for action, so that if we want to provide some direction to the school district and our partners, we can do that. So hearing that, I want to bring it back to the commission, talk about the event that we had on October 30th. And if there is no more discussion, yes, Commissioner Zuber.
I just want to say, I thought the content was incredible. I think that putting it out there about who is speaking and what they're speaking about, I think would really highlight and get the people. I mean, Dr. Cubilon Calderon has a huge following, and I know that people would have wanted to hear what he had to say, and also the topic of the social media is something that people would want to hear. So again, I think it was a great opportunity that if people missed, unfortunately, they missed it.
And I think something that should be noted is we had allotted time for each presenter, and as the moderator, I felt really bad that I had to cut Dr. Cubilon Calderon off to get to the next presenter, and then I had to wrap him up because we were just simply over time. So just my recap of that is great information, wealth of knowledge between the two individuals, and how do we share that with the community. So moving forward, we can certainly talk about that and how we bring that to the community. Any other commissioners' comments? Okay, we will close item 2.06 and go to our closing item. Plural. 3.01 is public comment. Madam Secretary, do you have any public comment?
We do have public comment from John Ippolito.
Thank you. Mr. Ippolito.
Thank you all for what you do, and thank you, Taylor, for your presentation. My name is John Ippolito. I'm a former K-12 teacher. I've had 4 kids go through Washoe County schools. Now I'm with Protect Nevada Children. You can find 1,500 of us on Facebook at Protect Nevada Children. You can also find us at protectnevadachildren.org, where we focus on the incredible amount of student data Infinite Campus collects, stores forever, and shares about Nevada children, and how this may affect the future of our kids. In 2014 and 15, media outlets on the left and right started writing about how all this data being stored forever about our children may affect their future. The ongoing ransomware attack in Clark County School District, a couple weeks ago, the personal data of 200,000 students in Clark County was released. The hacker told databreaches.net, quote, "I will talk about the serious issues with Infinite Campus after the next school is contacted," end quote. From Taylor's presentation, 72 million data points about a child by the age of 13 is available. I wonder how many of these data points are coming from free ed tech vendors that Washoe County forces children to use. In 2018, Entrepreneur wrote, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs raised their kids tech-free and it should have been a red flag. In 2018, the FBI put out a public service announcement titled, Education Technologies, Data Collection, and Unsecured Systems Could Pose Risks to Students. It's hard to do this because it's too close. Kahoot. In 2019, a 9th grader at Bishop Manogue took a suicide test on Kahoot, a 3-question test titled, Should I Kill Myself? The next day, Caleb committed suicide. That software was used by numerous Washoe County School District's teachers. It took 9 months after the suicide to get that software out of our schools. How do you think these free ed tech vendors are paid? Kahoot, a few months ago, sold the entire company for $1.7 billion. That's billion with a B. This is for a free vendor. Why is that company worth so much to these ed tech or to these private equity firms? That's who bought Kahoot. Washoe County School District won't tell parents any of this, unfortunately. I think Taylor has a lot of good ideas. I think there's a lot more to it, though, and I'm going to run out of time. You can find us at Protect Nevada on Facebook at Protect Nevada Children. For the record, please. And I can email these to you guys if I had your email address. Do you have an email address?
You, John.
I do.
Okay.
And for the reflection of the minutes, we will attach those attachments if we could. Thank you. Any other public comment?
No other public comments here.
Thank you. With that, we will move on to item 3.02, which is announcement of our next meeting, December 4th, 2023. And with that, it is 4:06, and I call this meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.